The dim light from my computer screen flickered across the walls, casting ghostly shapes that seemed to dance in rhythm with my weary heartbeat. My name is Alex Thompson, 35 years old, a freelance photographer, who has learned that beauty often hides in places others overlook. That evening, I sat hunched over my desk in my small Harborview apartment, editing photos of the misty harbor, the place that had both anchored and haunted me for years. The sea outside whispered through the cracked window, its rhythm blending with the quiet hum of my computer fan. Photography was my refuge. Every image I captured, the fog curling around rusted boats, the sun sinking behind the old lighthouse, helped me forget the unspoken tension that had long fractured my family. My parents' divorce had left invisible walls between us, and though my mother, Sophia, tried to bridge the gap with warmth, my father and brother remained shadows on the periphery of our lives. It was past midnight when the phone shattered the silence. The sharp ring cut through the calm like lightning splitting a stormy sky. I stared at the glowing screen, an unknown number. For a moment, I hesitated. No colleague would call at this hour. The uneasy pulse in my chest urged me to answer, "Hello." My voice came out hoarse from hours of quiet. A woman's voice, brisk and professional, replied, "Is this Alex Thompson, relative of Mrs. Sophia Thompson?" My stomach tightened. "Yes." "What happened?" "This is Harborview General Hospital. Your mother was brought in an hour ago. She's in the intensive care unit. You should come immediately." The words struck like a physical blow. I froze, unable to breathe. My mother, strong, graceful, always on her feet, how could she be in the ICU? I hung up without another word, heart pounding. Within minutes, I grabbed my jacket, camera still dangling from my neck, and rushed into the night. Rain poured down in relentless sheets, blurring the streetlights into hazy halos. Harborview's autumn storms were famous, but tonight the downpour felt like an omen. My old SUV roared to life, tires slicing through puddles as I sped through the deserted streets. The rhythmic thud of the windshield wipers couldn't drown out my thoughts. What had happened? Was it the dizziness she mentioned last week? I'd brushed it off, thinking she was simply tired from managing her antique shop, Sophia's Treasures. The 20-minute drive stretched endlessly. The hospital's lights finally cut through the fog like a beacon. I parked without care, bolted inside, and was greeted by the sterile scent of disinfectant and the faint hum of machinery. The night receptionist, eyes heavy with fatigue, pointed toward the elevator. "ICU. 3rd floor. Take the right corridor." The elevator crawled upward with agonizing slowness. When the doors opened, I stepped into a hallway drenched in fluorescent light. The steady beeping of heart monitors echoed in the stillness. I scanned the rooms, searching, then froze. On the glass-walled balcony ahead stood two familiar figures. My father, Henry Thompson, 67, tall and immaculate as ever in his tailored grey suit. Beside him was my younger brother, Dylan, polished and confident, his hair slicked back in perfect order. They stood close, whispering, their expressions oddly composed. No grief. No panic. Just calm, businesslike conversation. A chill ran down my spine. I took a step forward, but a soft voice stopped me. "Alex, wait." I turned. A young nurse approached, her auburn hair tied in a neat bun. I recognized her instantly, Lily, my mother's nurse during her regular checkups. Her eyes were filled with worry. "Lily," I whispered. "How's my mom?" "She's stable for now," she said softly, glancing toward the balcony. "But you need to be careful. Something feels wrong." Your father and brother arrived earlier. Their questions weren't about her condition, they asked about her insurance details. Her words sent a jolt through me. Insurance? At a time like this? Lily nodded grimly. Just watch before you act. I crept closer, careful to stay hidden. Through the half-open door, their voices drifted out clearly. Henry's tone was cold. Sign these papers before she wakes. We can't afford delays. Dylan's reply came quick, almost rehearsed. Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle it. No one will know. I felt my blood run cold. Papers. Insurance. What were they planning before my mother even regained consciousness? The fragments of their conversation tangled in my mind like a spreading poison. I forced myself to stay calm, and retreated before they noticed me. Lily's eyes met mine. You heard it too, she murmured. Be careful, Alex. I think your mother's illness may not be natural. Her words echoed long after she left. I leaned against the wall, my pulse hammering. The memories came rushing back. Tiny details I'd brushed aside. A few months ago, I'd stopped by Sophia's Treasures after a photo shoot. The air inside had smelled of old wood and lavender polish. My mother had been behind the counter, counting coins from the register, her delicate hands trembling slightly. Another dizzy spell? I asked, steadying her. She smiled faintly. Just tired, darling. Nothing serious. But it had been more than fatigue. She'd been fainting more often, forgetting things. Then came Dylan, suddenly visiting more frequently, carrying bottles of new pills. Dad got these from a specialist in Portland, he'd explained. They'll help with her heart. My mother had trusted him completely. But her condition had worsened. I'd questioned him once, what's in those pills, Dylan? And he'd laughed it off. You worry too much. Now, standing under the hospital's sterile lights, those fragments fit together into something darker. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breath as anger and fear collided inside me. Moments later, Henry and Dylan returned from the balcony. Their surprise at seeing me was fleeting, quickly replaced by the practiced smiles they always wore. Alex, Henry greeted, voice calm. Good of you to come. What happened to Mom? I demanded. Overwork, exhaustion, Henry replied smoothly. Heart issues, Dylan added quickly. Their words didn't match. My father glanced at his watch. She's stable. We'll discuss more tomorrow. Dylan and I have an early meeting. They left as swiftly as they'd arrived, leaving a wake of unease behind them. Determined to know the truth, I found Dr. Ellis, the physician overseeing my mother's case. He was a kind-eyed man with wire-rimmed glasses. When I asked about her diagnosis, his brow furrowed. Your mother suffered acute arrhythmia caused by a reaction to a cardiac stimulant, he said. But that medication wasn't listed in her prescriptions. Someone added it without authorization. His words froze me in place. A stimulant not prescribed. My brother's vials. My father's pressure. It all fit too well. I left the office in silence, my chest burning with realization. The people I should have trusted most were at the center of this storm. I returned to my mother's room and watched her fragile figure lying still beneath the pale hospital light. Machines beeped softly beside her, marking time. She might have lost if that call had come any later. I took her hand, cold and small, in mine. I'll find the truth, Mom, I whispered. I promise. That night, as the rain beat against the windows and thunder rolled over the harbor, I made a silent vow. I would uncover every secret buried beneath our family's polished surface. Whatever it took, I would protect the woman who had always protected me, and deep inside, I knew, the storm outside wasn't half as dangerous as the one waiting within my own bloodline. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the tall windows of the mansion, painting golden lines across the polished floor. For the first time in months, I woke up warm, clean, and fed. Yet comfort didn't bring peace. It brought purpose. I brewed myself a cup of coffee, inhaling the rich aroma that reminded me of mornings long ago, when I used to sit at my kitchen table, waiting for Alexander to wake up for school. But those memories no longer brought warmth. They burned. After finishing my coffee, I walked to the study where my brother James's safe was hidden behind a framed painting. My heart pounded as I turned the dial, each click echoing in the silent room. When the lock released, I pulled open the heavy door and stared at what was inside: folders, envelopes, photographs, and several USB drives, each neatly labeled. I carried everything to the desk and began to read. The first folder contained copies of the documents I had signed, the same ones that had cost me everything. But this time, I could see the truth clearly. The clauses were twisted, written in language meant to confuse. My signature sat beside lines that handed full control of my finances and home to Alexander. Every page was a trap disguised as protection. God, how could I have been so blind? I whispered. The next folder held photographs, grainy but clear enough to make my stomach turn. Alexander sitting in a restaurant, laughing with the same lawyers who had tricked me. Rebecca beside him, raising a glass of champagne. The date on the photo was only 2 days after I had signed those papers. Then came the audio recordings. My hand shook as I pressed play. Alexander's voice filled the room, low and impatient. Make it sound complicated but legal. Mom will sign, she always trusts me. Then Rebecca's voice followed, sharp and mocking. She's had that house long enough. It's wasted on her. We'll finally have something to show for all your sacrifices. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the echo of their betrayal. The ache in my chest was heavy, but beneath it, something else stirred, a slow, burning strength. James had known. That's why he'd left me this task. He wanted me to see the truth with my own eyes, to reclaim not only what I lost, but the part of myself I'd buried beneath years of blind love. 2 days later, there was a knock at the front door. When I opened the curtains, my heart froze. Alexander and Rebecca stood outside, perfectly dressed, pretending confidence. Mom, we know you're in there. Alexander shouted. We need to talk. I didn't open the door. There's nothing left to say, I replied firmly. Rebecca's voice was colder. You think that inheritance is yours. We'll contest it. Uncle James was delusional. You'll lose again. Their words no longer hurt me, they revealed who they had become. I watched them leave, then turned away from the window. The fear that once paralyzed me was gone. For the first time in years, I felt power in my hands again. With Robert's help, I spent the next few weeks gathering everything into order: documents, recordings, photographs, witness statements. The more we organized, the clearer the picture became. Years of manipulation, secret debts, and lies. Alexander had been drowning in gambling debts. He'd taken loans from dangerous people and used me as his escape route. The lawyers were bribed, the witnesses false, the story carefully spun until the world believed I was too confused to handle my own affairs. One evening, while reviewing papers, I found something I hadn't expected: a small wooden box with my name carved on the lid. Inside were letters from James, written over the years but never sent. The first was dated 15 years ago. Sophia, I wish I could undo our fight. You raised me when we lost our parents. You gave up your dreams so I could chase mine. I never thanked you properly. Another, written more recently, read: I see Alexander changing, and it worries me. Please be careful, sister. You give too much, and people take advantage of hearts like yours. By the last letter, his handwriting had weakened. You deserve justice, not revenge. If I'm gone, let this be your chance to rise again. Remember who you are, Sophia, you are strength itself. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I clutched the final letter to my chest. Thank you, James, I whispered. I won't waste this second chance. With every passing day, I felt my confidence grow. I was no longer the broken woman who slept on a park bench. I was the mother who had survived heartbreak, the sister who was reclaiming her dignity, and the woman determined to make things right. Robert and I arranged a meeting with Alexander and Rebecca. We invited them to the mansion under the guise of resolving the inheritance dispute. The dining room was set for confrontation, papers neatly stacked, a fraud expert and notary seated nearby. At exactly 10 in the morning, the door opened. Alexander walked in, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. Rebecca followed, expression smug. They were joined by their lawyers, the same ones who had taken everything from me. I stood tall at the head of the table. Thank you for coming, I said calmly. You've accused me of fraud and manipulation. It's time you hear the truth. Robert opened the first folder. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Photos of secret meetings. Recordings of their voices. Witness statements of bribes and false claims. The fraud expert explained every detail with precision. Silence filled the room. Rebecca's expression shifted from arrogance to disbelief. Alexander's hands trembled. This is illegal, he shouted suddenly. It's all documented and verified, Robert replied. You can challenge it, but the law won't be on your side. I looked at my son, the man I once believed could do no wrong. You left me homeless, I said softly. You took everything your father and I built. You called me greedy while you spent the money meant for your future. Alexander looked down, his voice breaking. I was desperate, Mom. I didn't know what else to do. You knew, I said quietly. You just didn't care. I took a deep breath. I could take you to court for fraud and elder abuse. You'd face years in prison. But I won't. Instead, I'm giving you a choice: confess publicly, return what's mine, and apologize. That's how you begin to make things right. 3 days later, Alexander came back alone. His eyes were swollen from sleepless nights. I'll do it, he said simply. I'll make it right. He kept his word. The next morning, he signed documents returning my assets and made a public statement admitting his wrongdoing. Rebecca left him soon after, her pride shattered. As for me, I sold James's mansion and used part of the inheritance to start a foundation for elderly people who had suffered from financial exploitation. I kept my old home, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that even when the world takes everything, resilience can rebuild it. Months later, I visited James's grave. The sun was warm on my face, and the air smelled of spring. You were right, brother, I whispered. Justice doesn't need revenge, it needs truth. I stood there for a long time, feeling peace settle over me. The woman who once lost everything had finally reclaimed her life.